Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. And let me just start by wishing John Scott well and hope that he will be sitting beside me when we look at the climate change plan update, because John's wise counsel, that's not to say I unequivocally agree with everything John says, but his wife's counsel will be important at that stage. Farming has been an important part of the discussion, and John has contributed to that, as others across the political parties have done. And I very much welcome the fact that we've incorporated, as a result of Maurice Golden's amendment, nitrogen accounting. That will be helpful to getting a proper understanding of farming. Now, we've had a bit of talk about, of course, the role of young activists in relation to this, and that's entirely proper. But I just want to take us back to something which I haven't heard mentioned this afternoon that is actually of equal and immediate importance now. And that is that this is a feminist issue as well as a youth issue. In that, in areas of the world, in Africa in particular, where aridification is taking place because of the diminution in rainfall, the drying of wells, and generally it's the women who are the farmers who do actually the hard labouring in many of the countries of Africa, who are having to walk many times the distance they previously did to get water, to get kindling. So it is today an issue that is a feminist issue that's affecting women across the world. And we mustn't forget to... if I get it back, Convener.
Briefly, John Finney, please.
Thank you. I'm grateful, and I would agree with these comments. Do you think if maintaining the existing road building programme will be a positive or negative contribution to these women in sub-Saharan Africa?
Stuart Stevenson.
I suspect if they had better roads in sub-Saharan Africa, it would be less of a feminist issue. But I expect that's not really the point the member is trying to make. Let's just quickly address where Patrick Harvey correctly said that the Greens advocate 50% target for 2030 in the last time round. However, the other thing we need to think about is there have been several changes to the baseline, which is added to the inventory of CO2. So we need to translate those targets in 2009 to what they would be today against today's baseline, and they'd be rather different. We also, in 2015, added another greenhouse gas to the inventory, nitrogen trifluoride. So there have been various changes that affect the way in which the numbers work. And it's just a bit more complex than we sometimes like to pretend. Now, I do want to talk briefly about the whole subject of unanimity. I strongly believe we have to be driven by scientific consensus, not by individual scientists who are at one edge of the argument or the other, particularly, not because these scientists are wrong. They will be correct within the area of their research. But it's that consensus that comes through the IPCC, and I welcome the new report that's come today. That will drive further change, as it has to. But also that if we start to pick scientists from an extreme position, valid as they are, we allow others to choose scientists who disagree with the whole agenda altogether. That is why we should always go by the consensus. Now, there's nothing to stop us exceeding the recommendations that scientists have. So I encourage my colleagues on the green benches to think carefully about withholding their support for this while continuing to campaign for more. Let me conclude, Presiding Officer, and say I'm inspired, as others have been, by Greta Thunberg and millions of young climate activists around the world. And when I cast my vote shortly, it will be thinking of her and her young companions. I'll be deed before it all matters. They have to inherit a world worth inheriting.